NZ Aerosports, Icarus Canopies, now Gyro. That's right, we've rebranded, and Gyro is our next generation. It honours our founder, as that's the name we knew him by, but Gyro also marks the start of a new chapter. And not to be biased, but it's going to be fucking epic. Long story short, we're more us than ever, so if you're new to the sport, or even a Sky God Ninja Turtle, welcome. I think our valiant leader Lucy, Gyro's daughter, says it best.
And we still got that fuck your attitude. Rebrand! Woo!
Rebrand woo indeed, Lucy. Anyway, head over to gyro.com for more info and get amongst your legends.
I was 19, broke, unemployed, and sold my girlfriend's canopy for drug money. So I thought I better sew her a new one. What a sentence, and what a story. This describes the humble yet outrageous beginnings of NZ Aerosports, the home of Icarus Canopies, in the words of our founder himself. From getting a paratrooper toy from his mom, watching parachutes at the DZ as a 6-year-old, jumping off the wharf with a parachute made from bed sheets, doing his first jump at 16, sewing his first canopy on a borrowed machine at 19, and starting to sell parachutes out of a garage in 1986, Paul Gyro Martin had an undying love for the sky. Our company started with one man with the wildest of spirits and a true blue sky dream, a renegade. In the time that Gyro created and ran the Icarus Canopies brand until he passed away in 2017, he pushed everything he had to its limits. We miss him, and we always will. Gyro is the next generation of NZ Aerosports. It honors our founder, of course, because it was the name we all knew him by, but Gyro the rebrand also marks the start of a new chapter, our next jump. Gyro is the space between sound and silence, art and science, chaos and calm. Gyro is a state of epic tranquility that transcends understanding. That moment, in the door, in free fall, mid-swoop, where nothing but the present exists. A perfect balance of euphoria and thrill. Gyro captures our passion for flying and our commitment to designing break-the-fucking-rules canopies that deliver pilots pure, wild flight.
Coming straight from the cockpit, it's another episode of Lunatic Fringe with the fucking pilot.
Ready, set, go! All right, we got another edition of Lunatic Fringe Into the Void coming straight from the can. And again, as always, the magic of the internet helps me out quite a lot. I've got somebody that's got some really unique perspectives, not just on skydiving, but on a whole lot of really extreme things that I don't think most of us think about too much. So tell me, who the fuck are you and what do you do?
I am Hannah Betts, and I'm a professional skydiver turned stunt woman.
Professional skydiver turned stunt woman. I've watched the Facebook posts and all the crazy shit you get to do, pictures of you flying through the air with fire behind you. It looks so cool.
It's an interesting job, that's for sure.
It's gotta be. I mean, is this something that you always wanted to do? Were you a kid going, I want to go be a stunt woman?
You know what? It's funny. I mean, I grew up doing gymnastics and a lot of other sports. And the funny thing was, just before I got into skydiving, I started actually looking at how to become a stunt woman, kind of when I was in my 20s in England. And then skydiving, just as you can see, completely took over my life.
It does that.
And as it does. And, my life took a pretty dramatic 180-degree turn. But ironically, 10 years later, skydiving that kind of came full circle and broke me into stunts.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it's funny how life works out like that.
So how did the whole skydiving thing start for you, and where did it start? Because you said you're from England.
Yes. I'm originally from Cornwall. And then I was actually living in Birmingham at the time. I was I used to be a police officer.
Holy shit.
I know not many people know. I was a full-time police officer for 4 years. And I, growing up in Cornwall, I was used to, a lot of space and adventure and outdoor sports. And honestly, in Birmingham, I was just bored.
All right, fair
like,
enough.
what can I do that's kind of outdoorsy somewhere close to a city? And I just had this idea. Oh, you know what? I'm just going to go skydiving, and it was one of those bucket list things. I'll get my A license, say I've done it, and move on. And obviously, I didn't move on.
Well, so you were an active duty police officer when you made your first jump?
I was, yes.
All right, so let me ask you a completely off the wall question. You're an active duty cop. Yes. Skydivers do a lot of illegal shit.
I know.
So that had to have been, professionally, was that kind of difficult? Because, I never censored myself on the drop zone, and I know most people don't. So walking on the drop zone as a cop must be weird.
Honestly, well, funnily enough, I actually transferred from West Midlands Police to Nottinghamshire Police, so I could live on the drop zone at Langer.
Oh God!
So I could save money. So basically, like, my mortgage money turned into jumping money. I lived in a trailer for 2.5 years
that's fantastic.
While I was an active duty cop.
So the cops were sponsoring your skydiving.
But no, it wasn't. It was fine. You know what I mean? I wasn't one of those annoying police officers that wanted to arrest people for every little thing. I was a bigger picture person, so I didn't really.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
I think anybody that's attracted to skydiving is going to lean that way anyway. We had a guy that was the Las Vegas version of the drug enforcement. That was an active skydiver, and one of the other fun jumpers was an active drug dealer. And they had this kind of unspoken agreement between the two of them that on the drop zone, it was all good. But
exactly.
Catch your ass off the drop zone and you're fucked.
Pretty much. Yeah, I think that's probably quite a good analogy. So,
wow.
Yeah,
that's got to be weird.
I full on remember when my inspector, who was in charge of me, found out that I'd moved to the drop zone. He was like, I can't have one of my bloody constables living like some fucking jippo on a drop zone. I remember him saying it. And I was like, well, what you going to do?
Yeah, for sure. I always had this mental image. I've obviously, being in skydiving for a bunch of years, I've worked with more Brits than I can count. And I always had this mental image of the skydiving scene there being a lot like a Guy Ritchie movie. Right? A lock, stock kind of snatch thing, and so
that's hilarious.
Yeah, the gypsy caravans it always kind of cracked me up. That, and when I worked in Cross Keys, we would have every week we'd watch a Guy Ritchie movie. So I'm sitting around a bunch of Brits who are quoting Snatch line for line. So
that's hilarious.
That's very fun. So you started skydiving there. When did you decide being a cop wasn't for you and being a skydiver was?
Well, I was. I got on a team, an all-female four-way team that we put together, and we were very, very dedicated to trying to win the national championships, but which actually involved beating the current world champions. There was another British team at the time, and they were actually the current world champions.
Wow!
But we had quite a special team put together, but we were lacking in experience, and we knew the only way that we would beat them is if we tried to go full-time training. And we were lucky enough to secure like a sponsor that would allow us to jump and just survive.
Okay.
And so we all ditched our jobs.
Wow.
And took a bit of a gamble to train. We knew we had to get like 700, 800 jumps in by the end before nationals. Otherwise we wouldn't, the potential was there, but we had to go intensely, and
Sure.
we did, and we were complete underdogs. And I think a lot of people thought initially our ambition was cute and adorable, but we beat them.
Wow!
We
Wow!
went to the World Championships. Yeah. So that was kind of the turning point. Officially, I took a career break. You can do that with Nottinghamshire Police for up to 5 years.
Oh wow!
And I remember getting the phone call when I was on the drop zone. I kind of forgot. Like, are you coming back? I was like, oh, no.
Wow. Well, I mean, there's a lot of people even in skydiving who you would say, yeah, I'm going to give up my job as a police officer to jump on a four-way team. And
Right.
even skydivers would go, whoa, you're what?
Yeah, yeah. It was really funny. It was quite a magical time because there was four of us, and we all had professional careers, and the other girls had very high corporate careers. I was really the only one in public service, and
Mm.
they gave up a way bigger salary than I did to make it happen, and it was a big gamble. But it paid off. Not without a lot of sacrifices.
Sure. Now,
But yeah.
how did family and friends react to this? Because I mean, if you've got skydivers that are doubtful, wuffos,
Mm.
they aren't going to understand it at all.
I think my family, I don't know, they rolled with it. I think they deep down they knew no matter what they were going to say or what their opinion was, it wouldn't matter anyway. I was going to do it.
Right.
So we were just very, very focused on the end goal. It's funny, I look back on it now, and there just wasn't like a shadow of doubt about anything. It was interesting. It's just, this is what we need to do. We need to be fully committed, like shit or get off the pot kind of thing. And
What do you think it is about skydiving? Because if you take anyone and you explain to them what skydiving fundamentally is, and what being on a four-way team is, and what winning a national or a world championship is, and most people will be like, and so are you going to get rich? Are you going to be famous? Are you going to have this?
They're
that?
like, oh, it's their prize money and all of that stuff.
And none of that is the case, and it's very difficult.
No.
So what do you think it is about skydiving that makes people do such dramatic things with their lives?
God, it's so funny. No one's really.
It's
ever
tough,
asked me that
right?
question. Yeah, I think I guess it's just for me it was just for the love of the challenge. It was just such a huge obstacle, and obviously a fun sport, and I think that says a lot about skydiving, that people are that passionate enough to do it and to make a lot of sacrifices with zero gain at the end. I mean, at the end of the day, it's probably a really fucking stupid thing to do because you're financially crippling yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
But having said that, it wasn't. I think if you just stick to the authenticity of what your goal and what your dream is, it always works out for the best, no matter how stupid or vulnerable it may make you at the time. Because by me doing that, I'm in a financially great place right now, but it wouldn't have happened actually if I didn't cripple myself financially doing the World Championship.
Well, and I completely,
because it allowed me, it took me to so many different places, and I had a reputation and name for coaching, et cetera. And
for sure. Well, yeah, I ask because I'm honestly curious, because I'm trying to answer that question from my own life, is why the fuck I made the decisions that I made. And just like you, but in a different way, my horrible life choices led to amazing places.
I normally balance because my life has always been like that. I normally just balance my decisions on, if it scares me enough, then there's something there.
Sure. Well, and
if it's not scary, it's not normally worth doing. And the scary part normally is the part that gives you major rewards, but you just have to take a bit of a leap of faith.
I think that encapsulates skydiving in general, though, because it's absolutely, especially when you're learning how, it's scary and sometimes downright terrifying, and it's fucking fun. And it's very difficult to explain that to someone else as, no, I'm scared shitless and I'm having so much fun I can't see straight.
Yeah, exactly. And there's that whole part. I think people always think that, skydivers or within stunts as well, that you're reckless or you're courageous or you don't have any sense of fear. I'm like, no, I was absolutely fucking terrified learning. I was a wuss. But you just have to have that element of fuck it and just go.
Yeah.
And normally good things come from that.
Well, and a lot of the professional skydivers that I know, I think that's how they ended up in their careers, is they've got that just enough of a fuck it attitude that they're willing to take the same leap that involves making that very first skydive as the same leap that involves crazy career changes and moving all over the place and doing all this different shit. It kind of takes that same DNA, I think.
No, massively. And I've always said that skydiving is a metaphor for so many aspects of life.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
You nailed it.
I wish the rest of life was as simple as skydiving can be when it's broken down to its basics.
Yeah, exactly. It's a meditative thing to do, I think.
Which is impossible to explain to anybody that doesn't, get into it, for sure.
Yeah. I
So,
hate it when people call me an adrenaline junkie because
right?
I don't really enjoy it. Yeah.
There was some article that came out a bunch of years ago that said that people that do things like extreme sports and skydiving don't feel fear and adrenaline and all this that the way that normal people do, and that they have to jump out of airplanes to feel normal and all this shit. And I was really insulted by it because it painted the picture that I wasn't doing this by choice, that I was being driven by, chemical stimulus and all this bullshit. And no, I'm scared to fucking death. But
Yeah.
I'm willing to do this and push those limits. I think it's a personal thing. It's being willing to push that personal limit.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more.
So you start jumping in England. You leave your career as a police officer to compete in four-way and actually nail this goal right off the bat. So if you hit it right out of the gate, where do you go from there? Because I sucked when I started. I mean,
well, so we did the national championships. We won that. We trained for another year, went to the world championships and won that, which was amazing. And we were training at Skydive Paris a lot because of the weather in California. And there's that usual kind of post blues, everything's over kind of transitional slump that is always really, really sucky, but is always temporary. And my brain had already started. I think I'd already known at that point there was just no way I could go back to where I was before. There's just no way.
No.
It wasn't an option. So I asked Skydive Paris if I could come out and work for them at the school, filming tandems, and if they would sponsor me for my sports visa to be able to do that, which they did. I did all the work and research for actually applying for the visa, and I just turned up to California with, I think, like a month's rent and $500 and 2 suitcases.
Wow.
And that was it.
Wow. See, normally people turn up into California, especially Southern California, because they want to go be famous and be a movie star, and you turned up to jump out of airplanes in Paris.
I turned up broke, in debt, sold a lot of my crap.
Wow.
And just started working at the school. Then eventually, after it, got my AFF rating, started coaching, wind tunnel coaching a lot.
When would this have been?
That was, when did I come out here? The end of 2008.
Okay.
Yeah. So the World Championships were in August, I believe, and I was out in California around October, November.
So it's my first impression. The first time I ever jumped at Paris Valley, it, by the way, was my first turbine drop zone. It's the first big drop zone I ever jumped at. I think the first time I jumped there, I only had like 25 jumps. And I was coming out of Las Vegas, which was at the time turbine on the weekend, but Cessnas mostly, and just this, very small place, not very welcoming to fun jumpers. And I remember driving through the town of Paris, horrified. Horrified.
Yeah.
Like, what where the fuck are we? This is ridiculous. You can practically see the fucking needles in the gutter as you're driving on the way to the drop zone. And then you get to the drop zone and it's like Disneyland.
It's a very intimidating drop zone if you're only used to small places. I remember shitting my pants when I first turned up because I was like terrified.
Oh yeah.
It's such a big deal, but I mean, it's an incredible drop zone. There's the facilities and the instructors and the safety and the pools and the restaurants and
Well, from the canisters on down, I remember being extremely intimidated, and I went out there with staff from Skydive Las Vegas at the time, but of course I was just a new kid, so they ditched me as quick as they could. And the nicest person that I met out there was Manifest Dan, who was incredible, absolutely awesome.
Still there. I saw him recently and he was threatening retirement and I said he couldn't.
Yeah.
But he's incredible. He gets hired to go to nationals because he's such a good manifester.
Yeah, no, he's absolutely incredible. Yeah. And he actually took time, again, I'm very early on in my career, and he'd take time to go out and do a couple of free fly jumps with me because I'm standing there with my thumb up my ass because, the fly boys are training at the time and Tanya and Craig are sky surfing and nobody's looking twice at me to go jump. And it just turned out to be such a welcoming place, even though it was so intimidating to start.
Well, that's what's so brilliant about that drop zone is there's kind of mega stars all over the place, but everyone's willing to help you out, which is really nice. So you've got to. It's such a great place to learn because you've got the best brains in the world to pick there as well.
Oh yeah.
Which is pretty rad.
Well, so you walk onto Paris Valley and you say it's an intimidating drop zone, but you're walking on this drop zone as a national champion in the UK, and you just won worlds.
Yeah, I mean that was returning. Like when I first, I'm just talking about when I first got there
Sure.
For our very first training camp. But but yeah, no, it's good. I turned up with some titles, which was nice, and I was very
With your
good friends
first
with
team.
Paris Fury.
I mean,
It wasn't my first team. Like I had done some babyer teams in nationals a couple of years prior to that, but I really, I did go pretty intensely pretty quickly.
yeah, I mean that's serious. That's absolutely hardcore. I mean, to be able to just go and it sounds to me like you pretty much flipped a switch and went, nope, this is me now.
Yeah, it's kind of it's how I do things really. If you're gonna do it,
That's
just
kind of
do
awesome.
it right.
So, any other extreme sports besides skydiving? Did something lead you into that mentality, or was skydiving your first foray into the that kind of world?
It's kind of. I mean, I used to jump off cliffs a lot in Cornwall with my friends when I was little,
All right.
because that's just what you do when you grow up. So I think gymnastics, that's physically pretty a brave sport to do. So I think that taught me a lot about body awareness. But in regards to what you would call extreme sports, yeah, for sure, skydiving, I'd say is well. Actually, sorry, I forgot a stage of my life. Prior to being a police officer, I actually was an outdoor sports instructor that used to work with youth at risk. So I did do like kayaking and rock climbing and sailing and stuff like that.
Okay.
But not to any like crazy level at all.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, so now at some point during your skydiving career, now you've gotten all these ratings, you've got medals going. You obviously started to put your eye on the world of doing stunt. Now that's a pretty fucking niche profession there. Where did you decide that this was not just a daydream, but something you wanted to pursue?
It was interesting. So after the World Championships and everything, really my goal was to earn money and get out
It's
of
always
debt
good.
and just, and work within skydiving. So I got all my ratings, and I was lucky enough to be put on some specialized military contracts just because I could, I was a pretty decent coach in the wind tunnel, all that good stuff. So I was really kind of quite content and happy just earning what I considered, as a skydiver, earning decent money and having a great living at Skydive Paris for, I guess, 4 or 5 years. I also I trained for just a free fly team for the US Nationals with my friend Nicole, and we went there just in the intermediate with the goal of winning the free fly national championships, which we did, which was great. And it was interesting. I had a really specific I remember having a very specific conversation with Nicole at the time, saying, I don't know what it is. I'm ready to move on, not away from skydiving completely, but I feel really ready for something new in my life and new challenges.
Sure.
And the next day, on the way to the drop zone, I remember the exact corner I was driving, I got a phone call from Craig O'Brien, incredible videographer,
yes.
a freefall videographer. And he just said, "Hey, Hannah, we've got this. I got called for a stunt coordinator of mine. There's a skydiving sequence scene coming up. Although it's green screen, it's all wire work. But the stunt coordinator wants an actual skydiver, so they can really match, the physicality of the scene.
Sure.
You'd make a great double for this girl. It's on this TV show called Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Are you available?" And I was like, yeah. And I was lucky enough to have my SAG eligibility because I had done a few skydiving commercials at that point, kind of stunt work. But I wasn't, actively pursuing. That was something that came to the drop zone directly to me because I was a skydiver.
Sure.
So that was really a big changing point. I was on set and I doubled this actress Elizabeth Henstridge, which was one of the main characters on the show, and I made a good double, and I guess I made an okay impression with the stunt coordinator. And he said, "You make a really good double." He's like, he was like, "Hey, what else can you do? Do you have any kind of sporting background?" And I was like, "Well, I'm an ex-gymnast and this, and this." And he was like, "Well, there's a simple thing on Tuesday. You're going to come back and work for me on Tuesday. Do you want to do that?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You better start training, and I will keep hiring you till you fuck up."
Wow.
That conversation. And I remember just thinking, right, I have an opportunity right now, and by no means did my stunt career take off at that point. I lived miles away from LA at the time. It was like a 2-hour journey. So I was spending all my time on freeways, going into LA to train at places where other stunt performers train and try and meet people and network people, which I absolutely loathed because I'm this small country girl from England and I can't stand that bullshit side of things. So it was really difficult for me. Yeah, and gradually, my skills built, and stunts is very word of mouth.
Sure.
You do a good job for one person, you kind of, you get recommended for other jobs. And I thought about giving up many, many times. It was hard. It was a pretty cutthroat industry,
Sure.
but
Well, it's pretty funny that you got started through Craig O'Brien, of all people. I actually just worked with him not that long ago. I was the pilot for the stunt sequence, the skydiving sequence they did for the Mission Impossible movie.
fantastic.
Yeah, and it was really,
Yeah,
really cool. I haven't seen him for years. In fact, my old Skysurf partner, Mary Tortomasi, who you, I'm sure, know from Paris, she and I competed against him and Tanya in the 98, in the 98 Nationals. And of course, they destroyed us because they were so fucking amazing. And I don't think I'd seen him since then. So it's pretty cool that he, just by way of knowing you and your skills, gave you that opportunity. That's really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, life is funny that way. I just think, and the coincidence that I made a really good double for this actress as well. Is you always look back on pivotal moments, but you've got to grab those moments when they come.
Sure.
It's not like somebody opened the door and said, "Hey, be a stunt woman." Like I had the one toe in the door, I would say, but that was enough for me to kind of creep in. But yeah, Craig O'Brien's just incredible.
Sure.
I've been lucky enough to work on many projects with him, and it's just funny how I really remember that phone call, and I remember thinking, I think this is it.
Well, somewhere down the line, and I couldn't tell you when, when you become Facebook friends with someone, and your posts started coming up, and I would see random cuts and takes that you're trying this new stunt or that new stunt, and you're getting launched off of shit and set on fire and this and that, and I remember really taking notice of that. And of course, stunt people, you don't know what they're in unless you're researching it. But I remember thinking it was super, super cool that you were doing that. But I also remember thinking Hollywood's such a shitty, nasty place. From the way it's painted, in my opinion, what a hard place to try and push through to that kind of industry. I mean, has that been hard?
Yeah.
Because I don't have a great opinion of Hollywood.
No, that was what I think one of the hardest things for me was kind of filtering through the bullshit for sure. I think I struggled at the beginning because I definitely kind of lacked a lot of self-confidence. It's really intimidating being in Hollywood and LA because everyone's the best of the best of the best there as well. And you're not up against, but you're surrounded by very established stunt women already, and comparison is the worst thing that you can do, but it's very hard not to.
Sure.
And I initially I get very, very uncomfortable around inauthentic people, and you're obviously surrounded by a lot of that. In that town, but it makes me feel like physically anxious, and I made the mistake initially of trying to behave in a way that I thought I needed to, looking at other women and kind of like the fakeness and, "Hi, how are you doing?" when you're networking and hustling, and it just didn't settle well for me. And eventually, once I kind of filtered through all that crap and found, like you always do, your people, at the risk of sounding cheesy, your own kind of tribe of people that are really true to themselves. And I kind of cut all that bullshit and was just very much myself. And Everything really changed from that point on. Life got easier. People connected with me easier. I gave less of a shit,
Which
I
is
think.
isn't that the
And
recipe to
then,
success just in life in general? Is
yeah,
just to stop giving a fuck.
without a doubt, stop giving a fuck and be yourself.
Yeah.
And you might not be everybody's cup of tea, but I think if you're pleasing everyone all the time, you're doing something wrong.
Oh yeah. If you're not pissing somebody off, you're working way too hard to keep way too many people happy. I
Yeah, and
mean,
you just got to set what your own moral compass is and your own values are, and stick to that.
and
And normally life is easier that way.
it's got to be so cutthroat in Hollywood. I mean, I can't even begin to fathom how hardcore it's got to be, for so many different reasons. But especially as a woman in Hollywood, I cannot imagine the bullshit you've got to put up with because you got a bunch of asshole guys that are running around that think they run the world.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, obviously, over the last couple of years, it's gotten a little bit more
Oh, it has to be.
breathable for women. Thank God.
Right.
Yay, the Me Too movement. You know what? I think that the lucky thing is if you're going to pick like the most grounded of departments in the Hollywood industry, it would absolutely be stunts.
Okay.
They're for the most part, because if you look at what they're normally the first on set, the last on set. They're hardworking. They're always on time. There's no attitude. They're pretty damn grounded, good bunch
Sure.
of people. But with that, of course, it's unbelievably male dominated.
Sure.
And it is harder for women because the way scripts are written, if there's 10 background soldiers all getting blown up, they're normally all men,
Right.
right? So that there's a lot more kind of easy, what we call nondescript days for men out there in stunts, because
Right.
quite often, fight scenes, police, military, prison, whatever, they always end up, even though it's not a fair representation, they automatically think man.
Sure.
So women often end up having to be, really break into the being stunt doubles.
Now, having
So
been
it's
in
a little more
Hollywood at the
cutthroat.
time frame that you have been, you've kind of been ground zero for the whole Me Too movement. And you're a
Yeah.
skydiver, which, and I've had many female athletes on the podcast, and everybody kind of has a different opinion of the Me Too movement in skydiving because, at least from my perspective, and granted I'm not a woman, um,
Sure.
I've always felt on even footing with women because you guys kick my ass at every turn. So I've never looked up or down at a woman. They've always been equal because they're such incredible athletes in our sport. But that
Yeah.
doesn't translate into your profession by any means. So how weird did this movement get for you?
I I don't think it got weird. I think it got I guess the only thing that I noticed the most, and this was my biggest irk, is a lot of guys really didn't, like, the good guys, the ones that weren't arseholes and sexist, or use their power for the wrong reason, or put women in uncomfortable positions. The good ones that didn't do that were really unaware of how much the bad stuff went on.
Sure.
And
I'm guilty of that.
weren't really believed when stories were told. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think the biggest conversations I had, the guys were way more scared of being falsely accused of something than they were scared of women being sexually assaulted,
I can see that.
or have something sexist happen to them, which always happens on a daily basis.
Yep. I can see
And that was frustrating initially, to have the conversation, say, this is not about you guys. Like, false allegations are the teeniest, tiniest percentage of this problem.
Right.
Like, get your head out of your ass and look at why this movement started in the first place.
Right.
And if you're a nice guy and your intent is always correct, you have absolutely nothing to fucking worry about.
Sure. Although I'll tell you what,
my biggest irk is when people would say, "Oh my God, you can't do anything anymore." I'm like, well, no,
yeah, it's a bunch of
can't
bullshit.
do anything that makes a woman feel really fucking uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And if you think that's normal, then you just need to check yourself. It's like, you can do everything.
Yeah,
Just don't be a
absolutely. Well,
dick.
the biggest thing that I found outside of the actual wrongdoing that has been going on, and the allegation stuff that was going on is guys staying busy virtue signaling so that they don't look like one of those guys. And if you're not one of those
Yeah.
guys, you shouldn't have anything to worry about. But I've been guilty of it as well. I stand behind women. I'm this, I'm that. And then I find myself thinking, well, but I shouldn't even have to say that because that's just how I am. I believe these things. I
Mm.
shouldn't have to say them. So you almost feel like an asshole for standing behind the women and making these allegations because you're like, well, but I shouldn't. I should just be able to believe her, and
Y-
it's not my. I
Yeah.
should keep my mouth shut. I'm not involved in this.
Well, actually, what we need is we need more good guys to speak up and be the voice as well. We can't do this on our own,
Oh, for
So,
sure.
I really, yeah, I think women need to be listened to, but they also, need to be supported as well,
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure.
Well, I think the first
You
time
know.
you and I ever corresponded, you had a comment up, and I don't even remember what the comment was about, but I said something along the lines of having been born not just a white person, but a white man in California, I couldn't get any luckier or have it any easier than I did. Uh,
Yeah,
and you had
and it's really
responded that.
funny. Yeah, I mean, and it's wonderful, and it's so refreshing to hear that. And I think a lot of men and women as well, if you're going to talk about like white privilege, but male privilege, struggle saying those things because they translate that with thinking that we think you didn't work hard to get where you are.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And then I think that's the thing people struggle the most with when we talk about privilege. It's like no one's saying you didn't bust your ass to
Sure.
get where you are, but busting your ass also meant that doors opened for you, they didn't close for you.
Oh,
And that's
yeah.
the difference. And
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
where people struggle. But it's so it's a really refreshing thing when people can actually say, yeah, this is
Yeah.
I had these opportunities because of this, this, and this.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Doesn't
no,
make you
no.
a bad person.
No, not at all. Well,
I'd forgotten about you writing that. That's really
yeah,
funny. I
I
wonder
mean,
what it was. I remember now.
that was it. Yeah, it was, and I forget what the actual post was about, but I remember reading the post and thinking, well, duh, of course I have it easier because I'm a white guy from California. Of course.
Right.
It didn't even I didn't even compute that anyone would think anything different. Absolutely. I have had opportunities that I never would have had I not been born in the place that I was as the person that I was. So denying that's just
Right.
stupid.
It is, but so many people still struggle with it.
Well, it's such
Which
a
is
shame.
just no, it is a shame. It's changing slowly, but it has to be discussed.
For sure. Oh,
It
well,
has to be talked
absolutely.
about all the time.
What
Yeah.
It was funny. I kind of got myself in a little bit of trouble with the editors from Blue Skies, Laura and Cola, because I wrote an article shortly after the whole Me Too thing started, and the
Mhm.
article was my perspective of everything that was going on, but in regard to skydiving. And like you said earlier,
Mhm.
there's a lot of well-meaning guys that aren't bad guys, but they don't see what's really going on. Well, I'll hold my
Yeah.
hand up. I was absolutely guilty of that because the article that I wrote was basically, yeah, I don't see this stuff happening in skydiving because women are just as fun, blah 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 blah, and oh, the backlash.
Oh
Cause
yeah.
and for good reason. As an afterthought, I didn't think anything about it as I wrote the article, and then afterwards, both Laura and Kohler were like, "Yeah." So the first article we wrote about anything Me Too was written by a guy, so that wasn't great. And
Right.
and then you kind of basically said you didn't think it was happening so much just because you don't have experience with it, and that was not so good. And
Yeah. It was
and
from
I've
your
kind of gone
perspective.
and I've gone out of my way to really try and educate myself from then on because I guess I always want to think the best of people and especially the best of our sport. So the
Mm.
idea that these horrible things are going on in the sport that we all love is terrible.
Yeah. But the wonderful thing is, though, God, I wish more people could take note of this. Is you fucked up,
Yeah.
and but you've also you owned it, and you figured it out, and you've moved on, and because of it, you're able to have these discussions. And
Sure.
I think that's what's so wonderful. I think a lot of guys are so scared to say what's actually on their mind through fear of offending. But I wish they actually would say what's on their mind if they're open for someone else to tell them why that might not be correct, or that perspective is completely wrong. And people need to be comfortable having open dialogue, and that's what's so refreshing about you saying that story. Like saying, I wrote something with really good intent, with no idea that it was through my perspective, through a male gaze, and something I have zero experience with.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And you didn't die saying
No,
that.
didn't die. Well, you have to be willing to fuck up. You have to be willing to make mistakes, and you have to be willing to look like an asshole. And I embraced looking like an asshole years ago. So I'm fine looking like an idiot. I've been writing articles as the fucking pilot for over 10 years. So I'm cool with being the asshole. But
There you
I
go.
want to be the asshole that's learning lessons, and learning,
Right.
all right, this is where I made the mistake. And it's not minor mistakes. I mean, that was a big deal. But I didn't think of it that way because I took it in this lighthearted bonfire skydiver mentality. And that was the wrong way to look at that thing. Especially, not being able to put myself in your shoes because I've never been a woman. Again, white guy from California. When have I ever been truly vulnerable?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that's just the conversation that we need to have, is just keep telling men, ask the women the questions.
Yeah.
Stop telling us what we do think or maybe think, or that's not going on. Like, ask the questions and shut the fuck up and listen.
Right. So hard to do because we're all so stubborn.
Well, yeah, and you've been conditioned to be
Yeah.
a certain way. The generation where we are the same way I was conditioned for a really long time. It took me a long time to get out of it, to be quiet and awkwardly laugh at things that made me uncomfortable, or sometimes I didn't even realize sometimes that sexist shit was happening to me because we were so conditioned as young girls to be that, be quiet, don't make a fuss, don't do anything, be small, be insular, don't take up space. And you have to get yourself out of those habits. Sometimes I still catch myself. It's rare now, but it takes a long time. It takes a lot of confidence. I mean, I'm excited to see what this new generation of young girls come up doing, because I just see so many that just, they don't know that they're not treated like girls, and it's really excited to see what they're doing. And they just don't have this fear or different idea of what they should or shouldn't do. And I'm excited for them.
Not conditioned in that way, which is fantastic. Well, I was lucky in my younger self-education, because as a lot of my listeners know, I worked as a male stripper for a lot of years. Which
how did I not know that?
I don't know, but I did for a long time.
Amazing.
Yeah, and so I actually put myself in a position where it was never harassment, but definitely sexual discomfort in very public ways.
Right.
It taught me a lot of lessons where I can see things, or at least I'm willing to see things from a drastically different view than you normally would. And for as horrible as some of the experiences were, I learned a lot about it. So there you go, guys. You want to learn something? Go take your pants off in public and see how weird it gets. So now the stunt stuff comes up. We're gonna leave the MeToo behind and talk about blowing yourself up and doing really dangerous shit. Is it as cool as it looks?
Sometimes it really is. Stunts is a funny thing. Sometimes you can turn up on set and literally end up doing nothing all day. You were there as backup or as safety.
Sure.
Sometimes it's just cool as shit, and you can't believe you're getting paid to do it. Sometimes it's terrifying and awesome all at the same time, and sometimes it just fucking hurts, and that's why it's called stunts.
I bet. Well, because a lot of the stunt stuff that you do, I mean, you're not necessarily doing things that have been done before. I mean, skydiving is one thing. We know skydiving. You can train for it and learn and practice for all these different eventualities, but you're doing things for a movie or TV that hasn't necessarily ever been done that way before. So you're, in unproven ground sometimes.
And that's what I really enjoy about that, is you train and you kind of have your repertoire of skills, but it's never used in exactly the same way, right? No set's the same, no stunts the same, no action leading up to it is the same, no prop is the same.
Right.
So you always have to have an element of flexibility and figure it out as you go. And I can't tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, competing in 4-way and the mental game is what I think made me become an established stunt woman, because Dan BC, our coach, focused so much on the mental game for us. Because with four-way, for the listeners that don't know, it's not like a free fly routine or like a gymnastics routine that you know exactly what you're going to do. You practice that same routine over and over and over and over and over again. So it's great. With four-way, you learn certain moves, but you never know what sequence you're going to get them in for competition. So the first time you go up to do that jump for competition, or the 10 jumps, you've never done that jump before, ever. So you have to stay calm and slow everything down in your head, because the muscle memory has not been developed. So it's all a mental game. And that translates so much into stunts. When you hear that 3, 2, 1 action, my brain just kind of goes into slow-mo, for
really?
sure.
Because I just got butterflies when you just counted down.
It's weird. I always get nervous. Even in competition, I could never be one of those people that could kind of get my heart rate down and feel really chill. Nerves would always get me, so I had to learn. I kind of separated my brain from my body. If that makes any sense. Like, I literally, almost, my brain has a conversation with my heart, like, okay, you do that, you pump away, you get your adrenaline going, but I'm just gonna stay chill up here. And that's kind of what happens with stunts as well. I do get like this big, I'm sure if you put a heart rate monitor on me, my heart rate would spike. It does. I know it does. I can feel it. But my brain kind of just slows down.
That's really cool. You know, I just watched a documentary about Tarantino, and I forget what the name of the documentary was, but it really highlighted how he has championed especially female stunt women. In fact,
Zoe.
And it's absolutely amazing, and I can't remember her name, and I don't even remember the name of the
Zoe
movie.
Zoe Bell.
She's fucking
Zoe
awesome.
Bell, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I was lucky enough to work a little bit on that movie.
Were you really?
With her. Yeah. And she's rad. And you know what? Because he hired her. This is just a really quick segue. There was this huge fire scene in that movie, which involved 8 Nazi soldiers being set on fire, full body fire, like insanely dangerous stunt. And normally fire safety is always, for some reason, just defaults goes to guys for some reason. And we needed a ton of fire safety people, and she brought in 3 people that she trusted, which was amazing. And we had incredible rehearsal days, and I was one of those women. I was lucky enough to be fire safety on there, but we got kind of mentored by these legends, and that wouldn't have happened if she hadn't been hired by Quentin. And I also got to drive on that movie too. And again, she brought in some females, which was great.
Do you get starstruck with that? I mean, she's fucking rad. I mean, her in Death Proof, and especially in the documentary when they interviewed her about Death Proof and how she really, he was talking about the fact that she was so used to trying to look away from the camera that he actually had to tell her to look at the camera in the scene because they wanted them to know this is really you. And it's so badass. I mean, it's ridiculous.
No. Yeah, no, she's a legend.
Do you get starstruck?
I don't get starstruck with Zoe. I have the utmost respect for her, but she's such a normal, authentic human being that you just want to be around her. So yeah.
Well, the Aussie accent lures you into it as well.
It's like everything, right? All the people that are the best at something don't need to tell people about that, and they're normally incredibly humble human beings that just have a very grounded sense of self, and they're normally very easy to be around. So, yeah.
I had the opportunity to meet Michelle Rodriguez as well, and she's another badass, and she was as low-key as could possibly be. I was blown away. I mean,
she's so mellow.
Yeah.
I did some AFF with her, actually.
Did you really?
I was one of her instructors, yeah.
Oh, that must have been cool. Well, I mean, you're in Mecca for Hollywood and skydiving.
Yeah. She's hilarious. She's down to earth and grounded. Has the attention span of about 10 seconds, so keeping her on track was really funny.
Awesome.
But she's the sweetest, most humble, doesn't give a shit, nothing's gone to her head type. actress.
Well, and that's kind of how you hope they're all going to be. When I met her, she was that way, very low key. I was lucky enough to spend a little bit of time flying for and speaking to Will Smith, one of the nicest human beings I've ever met. And that's how
Yeah.
you want them to be. But do you find that
Yes.
that's the norm in Hollywood, or is that the exception to the rule?
So for the I've been incredibly lucky. Like the actresses that I've doubled are just wonderful. That I've doubled regularly have been wonderful human beings.
Mm.
I haven't seen that much. I'm happy to say I've seen more great selfless behavior from actors and actresses than I have douchey ones.
Awesome.
Don't get me wrong, I've seen hideous behavior
Sure.
on set that you're just like, oh, for God's sakes, we're creating monsters. But for the most part, most people are really decent human beings. And I got to say that the crappiest behavior I've seen more often is from guys, not women.
Oh, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that
Yeah.
for a heartbeat. I always want to think the best of people because I will happily turn my back on an actor or actress and all of their body of work if they're shitty people. I just won't ever watch anything that they do again. I had a horrible experience with actress that shall not be named that I literally changed the channel if she comes on the TV.
It's not funny. Do it. Out her.
It's Jennifer Lopez is a horrible human being.
Oh, I know.
Have you met her? She's
I've
fucking
heard.
horrible.
I haven't, but I've heard. I've heard rumors.
Yeah, no,
yeah,
and
there's some big fat bummers out there.
Yeah.
They say never meet your heroes. Like Chevy Chase was just straight up an asshole, which was mortifying.
No.
But that's a very well known fact.
And I've
in
heard
this
that.
industry.
I've heard that. I actually was just listening to Rogan's podcast not that long ago, and they said that he's screwed himself up so much from all his pratfalls that he's always in pain.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why he's a dick.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's not why he's a dick.
And to be honest, most of Hollywood, if they turned out to be assholes, I could handle it. If somebody, and there's only actually one that if he turned out to be horrible, I'd kill myself, and that would be Bill Murray. But I know he's supposed to be an incredible human being. So as long as
I've heard wonderful things about him. So you're good. You're safe with that one.
Yeah, as long as Bill is still a sweetheart, that's all I care about. So now, what comes next? So you've got somebody like Zoe who was stunt woman forever, but she's now branched off into acting. So is this something that you've thought about?
Oh, God, no.
Really?
I actively do my best to keep my face away from the camera.
Tarantino comes to you. He says, I've got this amazing role and you're perfect for it. You just got to look at the camera and talk. You're going to say no to Tarantino?
Well, of course I wouldn't, but I think the moment Tarantino saw me try to deliver lines, he'd be like, oh, I've made a terrible mistake.
No, I don't know. I think under the right circumstances, I mean, if you can pull off the things that you do physically, I mean, granted, the mental game's a little bit harder, but you put the same shit that you put into four-way and into stunt, I bet you can do it.
Yeah, but the funny thing was I don't really have any desire to do that, and if I did, I'm in the right place to go to classes and
yeah, fair enough.
You know what I mean, and push that. But
and all the best actresses.
I love physical acting. Don't get me wrong. Like I love doing motion capture, and I love the challenge of being able to match someone else's body movement. And I really enjoy it when sometimes my face is on camera because I'm doing one of those nondescript stunts where it is me, playing a character that doesn't have lines.
Right.
I find all that fun, but at the moment I have to open my mouth.
But with the
really
accent, you'd be like the perfect evil villain woman because all the evil people in movies are English.
I know that's true.
Why do you think that is?
The only thing that I would be able to do is play someone mean or like a badass. I can't do the sweet. I don't think I would be a very subtle, nuanced actor.
See, but that's the perfect British thing. Every evil character in every movie I can think of off the top of my head, they're fucking British. And I don't know why that is. Well, I mean, it's the accent, and you come off more intelligent than the average American. You just sound better.
I guess we just sound like we're plotting and scheming all the time.
That might be it.
Who knows?
So now,
who knows? But no, that's definitely not
All right,
not on my
fair play. Well, now
not on my horizon.
you're full bore in the stunt career. What are you doing in
hmm
regard to skydiving? You still out fun jumping? Still out coaching or doing anything like that, or is it just stunt work
I
now?
I don't coach or compete anymore. Like stunts really is my full time thing. I still absolutely skydive. I don't fun jump that often. But I still do. And I did like a fun demo jump with my husband a few months ago into the Stuntmen's Association kind of big golf tournament.
Nice.
And I still get, I'm still lucky enough to skydive because I've gotten jobs for it, like Charlie's Angels this year, and I doubled Angelina Jolie on a skydiving kind of smoke jumper movie that she's got coming out, I think, this summer.
Okay.
Which is hilarious that I doubled on Angelina Jolie because she's like me, pale and stretched. But but luckily I was in a very very baggy fire smoke jumper, so you
All
can't tell.
right.
But so I'm lucky enough to be able to take skydiving and get creative with it with stunts when those opportunities come. But I do still jump, yeah, but
Okay.
not to the 1,000 jump intensity that it used to be,
Right.
1,000 jumps a year type thing.
So if you're out doing a
yeah.
stunt that's skydiving involved, do you ever look at the director or the guy that wrote the script and just go, "You fucking moron! There's no way." This is because you and I both know most of the shit you see about skydiving in film is just crap.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of smiling. If it's safe or it's doable and it's what they really want and they're not asking for your opinion, it's just a smile and nod. You go do it, even
Right.
though you know it's ridiculous and physically really impossible to pull off in reality.
Right.
If it's unsafe, you you have to you just got to be a very good diplomat in this
Right.
industry. So you got to let people get all their ideas out, have all their say, get all the ego stuff out, and instead of saying no, you moron, that's just fucking retarded, everybody's gonna die,
Right.
sorry, fucking stupid, then you say so that is one element. A more practical way of doing something, or another option is, or
Gotcha.
we might the way that we can work this is, you just don't say no, but you
Right.
say this is how we potentially could do it, or
Sure.
quite often you say, yeah, no, this is totally possible, it's just going to cost you a lot more money,
Sure.
and normally things
Sure.
get tweaked. So but that there are times when it took me a long time to realize, like, this is just how the industry works, and to not roll your eyes, like,
Oh, it's gotta
that
be.
just is the most ridiculous thing. And it's taken me a long time to learn to just shut the fuck up.
I imagine. Well, I remember being really impressed when I heard the plan for and then saw the practice jumps when Cruise and Craig O'Brien were doing the stunt for the Mission Impossible movie, because Tom Cruise, of course, is a skydiver and Craig is the cameraman. And we're
Yeah.
watching the rough takes of these, and it was really, really cool. And so when I went to finally see the movie, I was psyched only to see that scene. And then I saw
hmm
that scene, and I saw what Hollywood did to that scene, and my heart just caved in. I went, oh, it was the most amazing. It was really good. And Cruise actually did this jump, and he did this rollover, and it was really intense, and the camera was actually on his face. And then they went and put Paris behind it and ruined the whole fucking thing. And it made it look fake.
It's funny, isn't it, how CG can just take away, and once things get into the editing room, sometimes it is really heartbreaking.
Oh, I was
'Cause
blown away.
You quite often can do this epic stunt that you're so proud of, and then it gets to the cutting room and they butcher it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's 2 points to that. I mean, there's the scene. There's mixed opinions. Some skydivers think it's absolutely rad and they loved it. I was a little. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little underwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
Not from Craig O'Brien's
No.
perspective, and this is a really a major point in that, is that, and initially I think some other camera guys got fired because they were just saying, no, this is impossible.
Right.
Craig is just so good. He's that there was the resources there. It's
Yeah.
like, we can do this, but this is what it's going to take.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a challenge of epic proportions, but this is how we, do it one bite at a time. And he, he was the right guy for the job all
Sure.
along. But that was the difference between someone saying, "No, that's too hard." It's like, well, actually, no, it is possible, but
Yeah.
holy crap, this is what we got to do.
Oh yeah. Well, and I remember watching when they landed from the actual jump that they used in the film, when the
Hmm.
director and Cruise and O'Brien are all sitting around watching the cut of the actual jump, and of course it's no cuts, it's the jump from start to finish, and it was really cool. Like I was sincerely impressed with Cruise's performance on the skydive because he's got so few skydives. So hats off to him in respect to how he did on that jump. The way that it shot was absolutely spectacular. So the jump itself that they did was awesome. The jump that they used for the movie
Hmm.
was awesome. And then they put it on the screen with Paris in the background, and it looked fake. And I
Yeah.
saw it for real on the screen when they did the jump, and it was amazing. And then they did everything they do and ruined it. I was so disappointed. Oh,
So yeah, if it is harder if you've seen the raw footage initially, because you just see it for what it is, the purity of the stunt. And yeah, it really can dilute it when they CG it, which is a bummer.
yeah, it was unfortunate, but again, it is what it is. I was privileged enough to be able to see the footage the first time around, so I was still quite impressed with it. And again, hats off to Cruz, did an amazing job, and I didn't like the movie, but that's fine. Yeah, whole nother discussion. So, as is my custom, as we wind down towards the end of the podcast, I always ask people to give advice to those that are just getting started in the sport of skydiving, or any extreme sport, really. And for those that are wondering if they should keep going, they're kind of looking for that inspiration to continue. What advice do you have to those two groups of people? And especially, what do you have to advice to people that are looking to get into your line of work?
Okay, so for people that are just starting in skydiving, I always say a couple of things. Be very careful who you get your information from initially. Um, there's always a lot of people that want to give their 2 cents in. Just make sure that they're a really experienced instructor. They have a great reputation. Like, do your homework on who you're getting the advice from, um, and just the I see too many people get too complacent at the beginning and they forget that they're
Mm,
skydiving. Like it's always been said, skydiving isn't a particularly complicated sport, but it's a very unforgiving sport. And
mm.
nearly the majority of accidents start on the ground before you've even
Oh
got
yeah.
in the plane, the chain of events. And I know it's been said over and over and over again, but it's so very true. So just don't forget that you're jumping out of a plane. And
Right.
understand the stuff like my biggest irks quite often a separation, jump run separation. Understand the upper winds, understand what that means, understand the dangers of canopies being too close together, and canopy collisions, and just never get complacent under canopy. I've
Mm,
unfortunately watched, at a drop zone where there's so many thousands and thousands of skydives a year, you see more accidents, not because it's unsafe, just because statistics dictate that. And
sure.
all the deaths that I've witnessed have been completely preventable. So don't be those people. Look before you turn
Mm.
your canopy. And then
Yeah, for
the
sure.
ones that are struggling and are not quite sure that whether they should stay in it. I mean, my personal story, I was a really shit AFF student because I might not have had the best instruction, but I was also incredibly scared. So I was really tense. So I
Mm,
repeated a lot of levels because I'd get locked in a position and I would turn.
mm.
And I was sat down, deflated, like halfway through my AFF, and I honestly I was going to give up. I remember thinking, okay, I'm going to leave today, and I'm not going to come back. An instructor saw my face and sat down and said, "Hey, you will get it. Everyone's going to get it, and when you get it, it's just going to click. Don't give up.
Mm.
You just don't give up." And honestly, if that person hadn't been aware of seeing me, I goodness knows what different direction my life might have taken, and
Do you think that
so
was
for
the
those
turning point?
it wasn't a turning point, but it was just it was just everybody learns at different levels. And
Sure.
AF, how well you do in your AFF does not dictate what kind of skydiver you're going to be in the long run at
No,
all.
no.
And most flailing people turn out to be badasses. So just
Mm,
remember that. And if if in your head you don't want to do it because you're generally scared and you hate it and you feel bleh, and it's just not for you, that's fine. Walk away from it. That's absolutely fine. It's just fucking skydiving. No one cares.
Right.
But if you've got that little bit of drive and the scary feeling feels good and challenging, like don't give up.
Sure.
Everyone gets it. Everyone gets it. There's very few people that I've ever said skydiving is not for you.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
suppose looking back as an AFF instructor, I got to say the same thing. There were definitely problem students, but no one that I looked at and went, "Ooh, yeah, no."
Yeah, exactly. And having the right instructor can obviously make or break your beginnings. But
Sure.
it's like doctors. There's really good doctors and there's really bad doctors. So
Don't be a bad doctor. Okay, so for the Hollywood side of things, there's a young lady or a young man for that matter
Mhm.
that's listening right now that thinks being a stunt person is the coolest fucking thing they could possibly do.
Yeah.
Is there any advice, or is it just give it a try?
Oh gosh, there's a ton of advice. Yeah. The first thing I'll say is, and I am a believer that anything is possible, but the majority of stunt people that have made it have had some kind of pretty specialist background in sports, whether it be
Hmm.
gymnastics, martial arts. Mine was a weird one, skydiving, but my gymnastics
Hmm.
obviously helped me. But most people come from some kind of competitive sporting background. So if you have that, that's a great base, and it can be anything because that often
Okay.
is the thing that like gets your foot in the door, whether you're an incredible horse
Sure.
rider or something. The next thing is you have to be in a city where those people train. There's no such thing in the US as kind of like a legitimate stunt school. Here, you've got your qualification, now off you go. It's
Yeah.
you have to be tenacious, so you need to be somewhere like LA, Atlanta, New York, or Canada is huge, all the cities there, and you need to find out where those stunt people often train and start training and go into classes. They are there. You just have to kind of search. You have to be prepared to hustle, which means find sets, meet stunt coordinators, and introduce yourself. It's really weird. It's like cold calling. It's terrifying. And sometimes it's just awkward and horrible. Sometimes you might get a job from it, it's hard. It will take you a long time to feel established, and you're going to want to give up along the way. So the majority of people that are established and full-time stunt people, they've just been tenacious.
Mm. Well, yeah. I mean, it would have to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah,
Wow.
because there's going to be a lot of rejections. There's going to be a lot of thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm just never going to get regular jobs." You know, it's if you want it bad enough, just keep working at it.
That brings to mind the Brad Pitt character in Upon a Time in America, that just kind of was half stuntman, half butler, and do all for
Yeah,
DiCaprio's character as well. I'd
yeah,
imagine there's quite a bit of that as well.
yeah. I mean, initially, yeah, for me, it was the same. It was, I was working full time in skydiving and occasionally getting a stunt job, and but at one point, like all scary things, I had to commit of moving away from the drop zone, not taking any skydiving contracts anymore, and getting closer to LA and saying,
Wow.
this is it now." And it was a scary leap for both me and my husband. But the moment we did that, we started getting more work as well, and
Sure.
so
Well,
it's
now
it's
you're
that point, and it's that point in time where you need to be able to take your foot away from your safety zone and step fully into what you're trying to do. Otherwise, it's just
sure.
not going to
Now
happen. Yeah.
you're relatively recently married, yeah?
No, we got married in 2013. 2013.
Fuck, time flies by. Holy
I
shit. Okay.
know.
How is it? I'm shocked at how long ago you got married. We don't even really know each other.
I
Holy
know. It
shit,
goes
that's crazy.
so quickly.
Now,
Yeah.
uh, now he's in the industry as well.
Well, yeah, we met. He's a skydiver, and also his name's Travis Benagi. He was a free fly world champion, and it's funny. We both transitioned into stunt work almost at the same time, but very organically, but through completely different paths. So it's like
Wow,
we've had this parallel kind of thing going, but it's through different people. He works for different people. Sometimes we work together, which is really fun. But
that's
um,
cool.
yeah, no, it's cool.
Well,
Yeah,
shit. I
so
mean,
we
it
do the
sounds
same
to me
thing.
like from cop to professional competition skydiver to professional skydiver to professional stunt woman, you've had one fucking hell of a run so far.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah,
It's pretty
I
cool.
feel it is cool. I feel very lucky that the opportunities that I've been given have come my way, and I feel really lucky that I've learned to kind of um, lean into the fear of those
Sure.
decisions as well. So it seems
Do you
to
ever
work out
just
well.
do you ever just sit on the couch and giggle just a little bit?
I do pretty much every day.
Isn't that
I
awesome?
never, it's never an element of complacency. It's almost just every day, like, holy fuck, this
Yeah,
is
yeah,
cool.
yeah. Well, and I that's kind of been my benchmark for whether or not I think I'm living a good life and enjoying myself has never been what's in the bank, never been what I'm driving. It's at the end of the night when I'm sitting on the couch, do I giggle that I get to do what I do? And I don't think
Yeah,
there's been a day in 25 years that I haven't felt that way, even on the
which is
shitty days.
right, which is
Isn't that
what
cool?
it's all about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hannah, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to sit down with me and tell some stories and have a little bit of fun. I guarantee a lot of people are going to love this podcast. So thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Lunatic Fringe podcast brought to you as always by, well, wait, not as always, actually. Brought to you now by Gyro. Formerly known as NZ Aerosports, you'll head to gyro.com for their next level line of canopies. By Pussfoot, the Extreme Sports Collective. Head over to pussfoot.com to check it out. By Summit Parachute Systems, check out summitparachutesystems.com to talk to Jarrett Martin and the gang about kick-ass pilot rigs, rigging courses, and more. By Flyaway Indoor Skydiving, go to flyawaytn.com and check out all the cutting-edge stuff to come. By Pure Spectrum CBD, head to purespectrumcbd.com to check out their wide range of CBD products. And as for us, head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com to listen to any of the hundreds of episodes currently available, hit the link for our YouTube channel, pick up your copy of the Lunatic Fringe book or The Accidental Stripper, and get a sneak peek at upcoming guests. Once again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.